The first few minutes of a 911 call are often the most critical, from establishing the caller's location to assessing the severity and type of the emergency. Those initial moments can directly affect outcomes. 911 operators are trained to quickly take a jumbled and chaotic situation on the other side of the phone line and turn it into readable information and assign a priority based on their SOPs. This is how they do it, and this is Lifeline. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lifeline 911 with your host, Erica.
Hello.
I am your co-host, Gary, and today we are discussing the first few minutes of a 911 call. Those critical moments when you are able to take this, as I call it, a cloud of chaos and kind of distill it into readable, understandable information. It's a skill that is not easy to get.
No, it is absolutely not.
But it is very critical. So the basic functionality of a 911 call taker is you sit there and then the call comes in on your headset and this person's screaming or they're crying or they're not saying anything or any number of situations that happen during an emergency. And your job is to figure out what's going on and kind of take whatever's happening and find the slot that it goes into, like in terms of your SOPs. Like, is this a disturbance call? Is this a car crash call? Or is this multiple calls? Is it a robbery and public intoxication maybe? And try and get that all put together in something that's readable and that can be dispatched on to with the officers. It's a skill that takes a long time to kind of accumulate, I think.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I don't like to say one job is harder than the other. One discipline versus call taking versus dispatching is harder than the other.
Mhm.
We've said this before, they're just incredibly different. But if I were forced to put difficulty, assign a level of difficulty one or the other, I really would have to say that the 911 operator, in my opinion, is harder.
Mhm.
Simply because you are sitting there twiddling your thumbs. Depending on the agency you work at, you might be doing a crossword, you might be reading a book, reading a magazine, you might even be watching a movie or something, right? And an agency the size of ours, it's automatic call distribution. So you're sitting there and you got something in your ear like this, like a headset, and you hear suddenly this recording, so-and-so agency, USA, you need 911, police, fire, EMS. And once that's done, you hear either shots or you hear someone crying or you hear an argument or you hear screaming or you hear tires screech. You hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most important skill there is the ability to listen and immediately begin to catalog what you're hearing and start putting it into the slot that it's going to go into.
Yeah.
That is what?
Yeah, it's definitely a skill that takes, practice and time to learn, because on top of, being able to listen, you've also got to be able to think quickly and recall the information that's in your, whatever your agency's SOPs are in terms of how am I going to categorize this call, because you can't just take a call and throw it into the system, not with some idea of like kind of what's going on. I mean, you might have call titles that are like sort of a catch-all, like Nature Unknown or something like that. Like I have no idea what's going on, but 98% of your calls are going to be categorized some way or the other, and being able to quickly assess like what's going on requires you to know the material very well, because otherwise you don't have time to necessarily be pulling up the SOPs or scanning through them or reading through a book with them. You've got to know that intrinsically.
Yeah, and we have that ability. We're fortunate. I'm sure, I don't know, probably 99.5% of the agencies have that, or some sort of a CAD, right? Some sort of a system that helps prompt you towards a call title or title code or whatever your nature code, whatever your agency calls it.
Hmm.
But you don't have time, like you said, to go, okay, hang on, stop yelling long enough for me to go and figure out where it goes.
Hmm.
You have to have two or three uh, potential title codes stored in your memory bank and I don't know, what would you call it? A recipe or just an idea of what that SOP says. So like a nature known for us is, something's happening and it's pretty bad. You just don't know what. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily a disturbance because I don't know that that's what it is. All I hear is yelling
Yeah.
and I don't know what they're saying. I hear someone yelling. I can't make out the words that they're saying. I think I hear two voices, but for all I know, they could just be having a heated discussion over who won the last game of some sort, but it don't sound right. Here
Hmm.
you go.
Yeah.
Or
Or
or if you're listening and you hear you everything but a child of God,
mhm.
aha. Now we have something to work with.
Right.
But you're constant in that whole time, you're entering at least the phase 2 location.
Hmm.
And most agencies have a time frame in which they want you to get something in, even if it has to change several times between the time you enter it and the time that the officers arrive on scene. You still have to do something with it. You can't
Hmm.
just sit there and dissect it, trying to figure out what it is.
Right. Especially if it's a high priority call where you're like, I don't know what's going on, but I know that, police, fire, or EMS are going to be needed here as quickly as they can. Um,
Mhm.
there are times when you might have a lower priority call, and getting it in quickly is less important than getting it in accurately. But a lot of
Sure.
times, on life-threatening calls, it's like, hey, I don't have an exact, problem of what's going here or location, but I know that people are needed somewhere around this area. So you start the units
Yeah.
for that, and then as the call develops, and if you're able to talk with the caller more, you can narrow in that the call title or the location or what
Mhm.
have you. Yeah, and I think that that's kind of the important thing to remember when you're taking emergency calls is it's not going to always be something clean that fits neatly in a box. Sometimes, as it develops, it's going to change. You might have
Yeah.
heard, someone talking quietly, and you're like, "Is this a prowler call?" And then later on, it turns
Hmm.
out that no, it was just she was talking quietly because the baby's sleeping and didn't want to wake the baby up, and was just reporting
Yep.
a party next door. So,
Sure.
it can change.
And your ability, which I admire the 911 operators so much for their ability to do that, to they just go from one end of the disturbance or one end of the call to the other. It could be like this really minor thing,
Hmm.
or it could escalate very quickly from what you thought was a shoplifter that now has turned into a robbery by threat or robbery by assault. Oh wait, they actually did have a weapon. Oh wait, they did point the gun at so and so and they tripped them on their way out. And I mean, what? And
Hmm.
and they have to stay with it. No matter how frustrating it becomes, we still ask them, not only do I need you to get the address, I need you to verify the phone number, and I need you to do it not once, but twice,
Hmm.
please. And I need you to remain calm, cool, and collected. I don't need your voice to go up if it can help it. And if you do, I need you to recognize when it's time to be firm. But in the meantime, I still don't want the flow of information to stop or stall while you're interviewing this person, because that's really what it is. It's an interview. It's not just asking questions,
Yeah.
because in an interview you are asking questions but you're also listening, and it just keeps going. And
Hmm.
this and oh, and by the way, I need you to do it in like 2 minutes.
Yeah. You know, it at tops 2 minutes because a lot of
Yeah.
times there's just a whole lot of things going on because not only do you have sort of the type of incident that's occurring, the problem, the nature, whatever you want to call it, but also locations are a big thing. So when you and I started, people had something that were called landlines, which they were like you'd have a phone that was like bolted to the wall, and there was like a cord that ran from the receiver to the phone. it was a different world. It's hard to understand,
Oh,
but
I
like
just, I just, I'm
the
almost misty missing those days because landlines are the business because they pick up the phone. I got everything. I got the address. I got the phone number. Matter of fact, depending on what's going on, I know who lives there, all the things.
yeah, and even like
Oh,
notes associated with it sometimes, like
yes.
heart problems or whatever. Nowadays, the vast majority, 90% plus, are going to either be from two sources. You're going to have your cellular phones,
Mhm.
which they'll generally be sending you some sort of general area location, or you'll
Yeah.
have those wonderful things called voice over internet phones, VoIP. In which case, that information is whatever the owner of the line put in. So if they say they live in Abu Dhabi, then that's the location that's going to
That's what I'm
pop
going
up.
to get. Yeah.
So it provides a challenge as well to get a better location, especially if it's like a cell phone calling from like a downtown location where you're going to have really tight streets and lots of
Sure.
businesses and places to be. So when you first get that 911 call, getting that location is always the most important thing because nothing else matters if you don't get that location.
Yes. It's very true.
So finding just
And nothing, we can't do anything without it.
yeah, there's like there could be the worst call in the world, like screaming bloody murder, and if there's
Mhm.
nowhere to send help, then nothing else matters. So
If I can have suspect, I can have victim, I can have descriptions to, I mean, what? All of
mhm,
the things and the weapons, and I can have all this involvement in past histories and all of that. But if I do not know that you are actually not at this phase two location for whatever reason, but you're really at the corner of walk and don't walk at the Walgreens,
yeah,
I can't do anything with everything you just gave.
mhm,
Can't do anything with it.
yeah, and being that that's the most important piece of information you get from a caller, you have to figure out where exactly they're at as quickly as possible. But it doesn't necessarily have to be an exact numerical address. You could do like a crossroad or like an intersection if, or block range even, if you're trying to just get the call
Landmark.
in. Because once you put that call in, resources can start heading that way to try and ameliorate the situation, and then
Mhm.
you can narrow that down later. But taking that big cloud of chaos of just someone screaming and trying to get a specific location can be really tough.
It absolutely is. And I'll go back and I'll say it again. I admire the 911 operator because they have to sift through all of that, remain calm, and not forget to ask the questions. And a lot of times, most of the times, especially in an emergent situation or a critical type incident, it's hard not to let the emotions of the person on the other end of the phone stop you from following your line of question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, because you
Because they
have.
want to start off telling you what Buki did last month and see, they want to tell you everything that led up to this. And they feel like this is important. They want to give you the why. How did we arrive here?
Mhm.
And you have to finesse respectfully. Well, okay, I know what Buki did last week or last month or last year feels important, but that's not what I need right now. I need X, Y, and Z, starting with where.
Mhm. Yeah, because of all of the interrogation questions, the who, what, where, why, when, how, um, the the one that we care least about is the why. Like it doesn't
Yes,
matter. It doesn't matter why this guy's stabbing this other girl. I don't care, but we need to know everything else but the why. So,
no kidding. The why will take, that's for the police to find out so they can tell, so they can put in their report so the prosecutor can figure out just how much jail time they're going to be asking for
mhm,
you.
yeah,
For us, not relevant.
yeah, because our goal is to get first responders there as quickly as possible so that they can preserve life and property, and the
Mhm.
why is not the concern there. So getting over that hurdle with people that call into 911 is often really a challenge because they feel like if I tell them the why, if I tell the police the why, then I'm going to be in the right because, as they say, everybody's the hero of their own story, right?
So true.
So I
It's
haven't
human
made
nature.
a mistake. Yeah, I was totally justified in taking a golf club to that lady's window because she nicked my car the other day. It's not my
Yeah.
fault,
Nope.
but that doesn't really matter.
The club. So now that makes me think of something. And maybe talking to the newest of the new operator who may one day hear this. The challenge is figuring out how to get past the why to the who and or to the what and the
Hmm.
who and the where. Because we've already established where the resources are needed. And if we can, we'd like to narrow that down if it isn't already established that it's at 123 Main Street, right?
Hmm.
So they're going all over the place and they're yelling, they're screaming, and they're telling you all these things. How, as a newer person, do you slice through that to get to tell me what happened? Because see, for them, tell me what happened includes the why.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is where EMS has one up on, I think, uh, a lot of police agencies in that they will say after they get that preliminary information, phone number, verify it for me twice, what's the address, who are you, blah, 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 tell me exactly what happened.
Hmm. Yeah.
You have to figure out how to say that in a way that cuts through but does not invite the once upon a time on a dark and stormy night.
Yeah, I always told my call taker trainees and my employees that when people call 911, it's kind of picture it like a dam has burst. So you're going to have this giant river of powerful emotions flowing down, and it's going to
Oh,
move,
that's
and
good.
you can't stop it. But if you say the right things with the right tone, you can redirect it. People are going
Oh,
to
that's good.
thank you, but like people aren't going to respond to really forceful things like trying to like just like straight up block the river flow. But if you can
Yeah.
redirect it, then you can get that energy, that emotional nervousness, sorrow, anger, whatever they're calling with,
Mhm.
that you can get that to be a productive end. So yeah, I know Pookie hit you the other week. What is she wearing? Um, and move them
You
off
sound
that
so funny
topic.
saying pookie. That's just funny to me. But no,
Pookie.
sorry, go ahead.
Because you need to get specific information, and if you can get them, because a lot of times when people call in, their mind is just not functioning right, and sometimes even
Sure.
if they're not calling in, their mind isn't functioning right, but they're kind of stuck in a loop of thought. So if
Mhm.
you can get in there as a call taker and take over that loop and redirect it to productive means of answering questions that need to be answered, then you're going to have a much more successful flow of the interrogation.
Okay, CTO.
Hmm.
We're training 911, but how do I get them to not do that? How do I get you keep telling me about this, redirecting the dam, but how? What's the first thing I need to say to them? Calm down.
Yeah, that's never the right answer at any point of your life, really. So, gentlemen, if you're out there, don't use that ever. Not going to work well.
If you're watching YouTube, look at my face.
Yep.
That's what you're going to get back when you say that.
Hmm. So you've got to find a way to keep it productive. So don't say calm down. If you have the person's name, using their name. So instead of being like, Erica, calm down, I just need you to answer this question, say, Erica, say like, Erica, I got the information on that. What color shirt is he wearing? You want to ask really a closed-ended, easy question, because that's going to
Hmm.
allow the mind, even if they're really upset about something, that's going to allow the mind to focus and kind of move forward.
And I like that you said the name. And I find, well, I don't remember her name now, but my CTO back in the day that taught me 911, one of the
Hmm.
first things she told me, she says, don't ask for their name and then don't use it.
Yeah.
In that emergency situation, new people who are listening, this is one of the most valuable lessons I have ever had, and I have never forgotten it, and it works. Gary, I know you're afraid, or I know you're scared, or I know this happened to you, and I got it. I know that you're at so and so. Now, Gary, tell me, what does he look like? Do you know this person? Gary, blah blah blah. But just constantly, because no matter what happens,
Hmm.
people recognize their name. No matter what state of heightened emotion they're in. Think about it when you're in a crowded room. If you hear Gary, no matter what's going on, you're going to turn around, and
Hmm.
it snaps your brain, and it causes you to zero in on the operator's voice. So, ma'am, 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 sir, sir,
Yep.
sir.
You'll hear that
Oh my
all the time.
God, it drives me insane. And I think I did that in the very beginning of my career,
Hmm.
taking calls. And when she said that, my brain went, well, I don't know them like that. Yes, you do. You
Hmm.
have established a relationship with them. You are the link between safety and not. Absolutely get their name and use it.
Hmm. Yeah, because that makes a connection, and even though they're not going to know your name, um, you saying their name is something that's going to kind of connect with them. Um, like think about like times that you were stressed. Like I remember one time when I was younger, I was having a dental work done that was very stressful for me. And so the nurse was there. She just put her hand on my shoulder and was like, "It's gonna be okay, Gary." And like just that, like acknowledgement that I was like a person, like really helped relax me because I'm not just a number. The same way when people call in, and sometimes you can't get their name, and
Sure.
don't don't ever just use ma'am or sir. Like that's never going to really get you forward progress with them.
I love the way you said that. So diplomatic.
Yes.
Don't use ma'am and sir repeatedly in emergent situations. You know why? It doesn't work.
Hmm.
Simply put, it does not work.
Yep. Taking the time to get their name is a much better use of 5 seconds than saying
Mhm.
ma'am 3,000 times.
Yeah, because like you said, their goal is to get their story out. Their goal is to get the help that they need, and they are in a heightened state of emotion. They are afraid. They are hurt, panicked, all of the above. And all they know is, and as you said it beautifully when you said this dam of information and emotion coming at you, the best thing you can do is slice through that and get to a place where they can hear you. And the quickest way to do that is their name. Now, that's not to say that you stop being the 911 professional that you are, right? And you slip into friend mode. No, but now we're trying to get somewhere, and the best way to link them to the call and allow them to be in a headspace to give you what you need is to acknowledge that, and you know what, acknowledge their humanity.
Yeah.
They're not just someone who's called and interrupted your book.
Hmm. Yeah, because
Just saying.
as we've said before, usually when people call 911, it's one of the worst days of their life. So they need that to reach out, to you. And there's so many things you have to do as a call taker so quickly, especially at the start of a call,
Mhm.
that establishing if not a connection, at least an understanding with the person so that they know that you're listening to them and trying to take their call as seriously as possible, um, will help you get the call in more quickly, even though it may seem counterintuitive sometimes.
Sure.
But yeah, so you've taken this chaotic mess of just craziness, and now first thing you've gotten is the location, and you figured out kind of what's going on. You're using their name to try and expedite, to cut through that wall of emotion to redirect it.
Hmm. Yep.
And the kind of the next part that a call taker has to do is take that information you have and now put it into a dispatchable form. So, and you've
Yeah.
got to do that on the fly while you're also managing this person who's stressing out and trying to type and get the information as well. So it's a really tricky mix of jobs that you have to do. You got to be a therapist. You got to be, an interrogator, a detective. You got to be a typist, a secretary. All of these things at
Yeah.
the same time quickly.
And you're listening in a way that is not normal. Because when you think about it, when we're talking about active listening in outside of the emergency profession, right? You hear people say you listen to understand, not listening to figure out what you're going to say next. So for the 911 operator, they are condensing information. They are typing and or communicating oftentimes in shorthand in a way, abbreviations that are normal for your agency, accepted abbreviations, which we have a list of them. So you have to take all of this information. Now, once you've got them in a place or a headspace where they can actually tell you what's going on in a way that you can process and understand, now you have to take all of these words. And now I need 2 or 3 sentences to get started.
Yeah.
All the while reassuring them, keeping them calm if they are, or as calm as possible under the circumstances, but you're also listening still. And not just to them. You're listening to what they say. My favorite, I love to say it this way. You're listening to what they say. You're listening to how they say what they say. You're listening to what they do not say. You're also listening to how they do not say what they do not say. And you are listening to whatever's going on in the background. Fielding questions from the dispatcher or fielding questions from the responding officers, because they have every right to ask and require responses. You are probably, and especially in an agency like ours, you're looking at the map, you see how close they are. So you're watching all of this. Talk about switch tasking like nobody's business. Notice I did not say multi.
So kind of what you're saying is it's a pretty easy job is what I'm hearing, right?
Everybody could do it.
Yeah, it certainly requires an enormous amount of training and skill to do and to do well, because you've got the hard skills, which are, can you type X number of words a minute? Do you know how to turn on the computer? Do you know what our policies are? And then you've got the soft skills of how do you interrogate a caller? Because some people, I think, don't like the term interrogation when you call into 911 because it's like, this is like the victim, but it's still an interrogation because you're trying to get this information from them. It's not necessarily that they're the bad guy in the case, but you're trying to get, interrogate information from them. So that's a soft skill.
Well, one of the things that I remember when I was training in Denver, I would have to say something akin to, maybe not exactly like this, but you cannot take a side when you're taking the 911 call until you know you have a side to take. Meaning, you have to ask questions to determine who it is you have on the phone. Do I have the suspect? Do I have the victim? Do I have a bystander? Do I have a relative? Or do I even have someone who's on the scene? Or do I have someone who is calling on behalf of someone else? Which means you have to then change your line of questioning.
Yeah.
You're constantly thinking and you're constantly updating this call and thinking and running through your mental Rolodex of nature codes and descriptions and definitions of those nature codes to make it fit what is happening. And it's a very fluid situation.
Yeah,
It's a constantly moving situation. From the time the phone is picked up, the call drops into your ear from the ACD to the time you are done and you can type in no other information. It's fluid the whole time, most of the time. I said the whole time. Yeah, it is. It's because even in what may start out as a barking dog call can quickly change to something else, because everybody that calls 911 who is in a critical situation is not yelling.
Correct. Yeah. You'll find a lot of times that people can be very calm in horrendous situations. So that, as you said, listen to how they say things and listen to how they don't say things. That's all part of the job, and you've got a very limited window to kind of get that in, especially on those really hot calls where a few seconds can determine whether somebody lives or dies. And there's plenty of there's so many spots where delays can happen along that train of from the 911 call to the first responders, getting on scene. Don't be that spot of slowdown,
Sure.
and treat every call that way so you can get through them quickly and get on to the next one. It can be stressful, but it's also, the whole point of the job, really.
Yeah. Well, and this is where I have to say, and I don't know if we've talked about this in a previous episode or not, but one of the best things that ever happened to me as a 911 operator was having had the skill or the training as a dispatcher. And one of the best things that's ever happened to me as a dispatcher is having had the skill and the training of being a 911 operator. It makes you well-rounded. And it creates it creates an understanding of both disciplines, because even if you're in an agency where you do both, you are often, unless depending on the size, but you're often not doing both of them simultaneously.
Right. Yeah.
Which means you have to have some understanding of what skill set is or what discipline is going through as they're trying to give this information to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so as you said, like a more holistic understanding of the process is always helpful. Even if you're not a master of every bit of it, at least if you have kind of dipped your toes in and like, okay, I see how this puzzle piece kind of fits with the puzzle piece that I generally do. And, the next puzzle piece down the road. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good idea.
It truly was just the best thing. And even I find myself now, and not to get off topic, but I think it is still relevant, looking with the bird's eye view that I have as a supervisor, because that's kind of the way we look at things. We're looking at the whole floor. Our agency has both disciplines. You are a call taker or you are a dispatcher. You are not both at the same time. That's probably going to change before too long, but hey, you didn't hear it here.
You heard it here first.
I didn't. You didn't hear it from me. I was just playing y'all. No, but it's good to have that well-rounded viewpoint, because now I can talk to both disciplines about the other. So in our agency, dispatchers often find themselves frustrated with the call takers because they feel like the information isn't coming fast enough or clear enough. But what they don't realize is just how difficult it is to operate in controlled chaos. It may sound like it's easy. Just ask the question and get the answer. Easier said than done.
Yeah, it's much, because like dispatching is generally, it's a team sport in the sense that you're sending out officers and you guys are working together. But by and large, you're kind of doing it on your own. Like, so how fast and how well you do it is completely dependent on you for the most part. Whereas as a call taker, it is a team sport, because your partner in this is the other person on the side of the phone who's not having a great time and may not be up to playing a game of badminton or what is that new game? Pickleball, lemon ball, something. Yeah, they may not be up to hitting the pickleball, the pickle or whatever as good as they might otherwise do. So it is much more conditional upon how they're acting and responding. So there might be longer periods of time before you can get, critical information just because of the caller.
Yeah. And again, and I will say it again, managing these emotions coming at you while you're still trying to get this information is just plain hard. There is no other way to say it. It's hard because you are inside there, however legitimate or illegitimate you might think it is, on the other side of the call. In that moment, for them, this is their nightmare.
Right.
A lot of times. And you're having to manage their emotions and still treat them with dignity and respect while still doing the things that I need you to do, which is gather the information, condense it down into something we can actually do something with, get it out so we can respond. Easier said than done.
You right, yeah. And not only that, but unlike the dispatchers who kind of they might have a lot of horrible stuff that they read in the calls. Those that are call takers also have like the trauma of having somebody
Hearing it.
screaming at them or crying at them, which
Yeah.
is really tough. And you can't, you don't have the luxury of not you don't have the luxury of breaking down. You've got to continue
No.
on and be a professional despite that.
Yeah.
And also knowing that the next call you get maybe something else completely different that's also terrible.
And there may not be a break in between.
Right. Yeah, it could be that next call that's been waiting in the queue for
Yeah.
30 seconds. So,
Yeah.
you have to do all of these things as a call taker in a short amount of time with a high degree of accuracy. And if you don't, the consequences are deadly. So
Can
it's
be. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Way to go,
not
Gary. Just
yeah.
don't stress them out or nothing.
No stress, but like that's why you have the training and the expertise, and you've got
That's
people
true.
around you that can help. But it's a challenge, and recognizing and understanding that challenge will better prepare you to overcome it, I think. And
Yeah.
that's why it's so critical to get all of these things done as quickly as you can from the moment that phone rings. Don't waste time on it because you never know
Yeah.
when that phone will disconnect, and then that's all the information
Yes.
you'll ever going to get.
Yeah. And you have to go into information gathering mode immediately, not judgment. Notice I said that. I said that on purpose. That was not a slip, not judgment, right? Our job is not to judge the validity of the call. It is to process the call
Mm-hmm.
because it's easy. And I'm talking about myself in my younger, less experienced days when I would be like, I mean, I would do it, but I still had I still had judgment building because as I'm listening to this call or I'm taking this call and processing the call, I'm going, this is not anything like I thought it was. Why are you calling me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're not calling you. They're calling 911.
Right.
And the job doesn't change based on what you think the call's validity is, whether you think it's foolishness or whether you think it's a waste of time or whether they're wasting that 50 cents that's added onto their phone bill that actually pays for our services. None of that's relevant.
Right.
Yeah, I had to get my teach on in the
That,
middle.
no,
I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Speaking of getting your teach on, we're going to be having a new segment this week, which I am excited for. It's going to be the mailbag segment.
Ding ding, mailbag's here. It's the sound we love to hear. Quick and bright, the vibe is clear. Let's read your words with a cheer.
All right, so we have some questions.
We should have a song.
Yes, we'll come up with some fun ditty for that.
Mr. Postman.
Might get copyright infringement on that, but we'll see what we can
Okay,
do.
well, fine. All right, okay.
But we've got some questions that have come in, and for you to answer, Erica. So, are you ready? She's
Well,
not.
it's got to be me.
Yeah, I'm asking them. People don't want to hear my voice all the
Okay.
time.
All right, fine. Okay, here we go.
All right. So the first question is from Scanner Dad 42. I've noticed that sometimes
I love that name. That's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
I've noticed that sometimes EMS shows up before police, and other times it's the opposite. Who decides which agency is dispatched first, and is that part of the call taker's job in the first few minutes?
Who decides? Well, yes and no. Yes, it is kind of part of the call taker's job in the first few minutes because while you're doing your after you've verified the information, right? You know exactly what the phone number is. You know where we're going. You're discerning what's happening based on what's being told to you. That's part of that thing that Gary talked about in the beginning of the determining what nature code fits, right? Whether it's medical or whether it's police. If it's medical, then if it's done correctly and you're not in an agency where they triage the call also, they will gather that first few pieces of information, address, phone number, who are you, house or an apartment, blah, 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 blah. And then they ship it off to the resource that is most needed. And medical always trumps.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, yes. As to if they're both dispatched at the same time or both needed on the call, who gets there first depends a lot of times on which resource is less tied up and who
Right.
might be closer. Sometimes EMS typically EMS takes less calls than police. So I don't want to say idle, and I don't want to say they're not doing anything, but their volume is just lower. So a lot of times they can get there faster because thankfully people don't need medical attention in a life-threatening manner as often by comparison. I hope that answers the question. I don't know.
Okay.
Reread it if I missed something.
No, I think you got it. Yeah, I would also say that sometimes, depending on the call, you might have medical or fire stage, which is where they do not enter the scene.
Good point. Yeah,
Because
it's not safe.
yeah, because the first rule always is you have to neutralize the threat. Nothing else matters
Always.
until that happens. So
Agreed.
if there's a guy with a knife or a gun running around, you're not going to have any medical or fire stuff come in until that guy is down and not a problem
Yep.
anymore.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you, because I forgot about that part.
The next question is from Midnight Shift Mama.
I'm gonna be laughing at these. These are awesome. I need a name. Oh my gosh. I need a name.
How do dispatchers stay calm when a caller is screaming or panicking? Are there training techniques for controlling the emotional temperature of a call? It's a good question.
That's a good question. And I would say from the call taking perspective, I'm not sure if there's really a technique so much. I'm sure there are classes out there, but the average agency, and I'm just going to be incredibly honest right now, the average agency does not send us to a place to say, here's how you regulate your breathing while they're yelling into the phone. That's not what happens. It is repetition that I believe kicks in, because the training, you've been doing this now, but before you're on your own, you've been doing this now for weeks on end, months on end. And by the time you are released, is desensitized a good way to put that? Because, the shock value that you have when you first start taking calls is like, and then over time, right, you don't panic as much. So I think to answer the first part of that question, how do they overcome it? I think through repetition. And as far as not being affected, I don't think that's ever the case. I think they just press through because the training kicks in and they go into autopilot.
Yeah, I would echo that as well, that it's kind of like if there's like a cold pool or a river. When you jump into it at first, it's shocking to you. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh. But after being in it for a few minutes, you're okay. It's tolerable. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of that is from the training. So when people first start at 911, they'll listen to these calls or hear these calls, and it can be really hard for them, which is why they're not the ones taking the call at that time, or they have a trainer
Agreed.
with them until they've had enough
Yeah.
time to kind of, we'll say, acclimate to
Yeah,
the
that's a
level.
good way.
Yeah, to the level of trauma that they're going to be hearing. And as we talked about on the Versadex Mindbase issue, that trauma can accumulate over time. But once you get, accustomed to it, it's less bad. It's less traumatizing,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
So, like, living in Texas, summertime is really friggin' hot all the time. And in, May, when it hits 100 degrees, it feels terrible. By the time you get to August, it only feels really bad. So you get a little
Yeah.
bit more used to it.
That's
guess.
awesome. That is so good. What was the rest of that question? I'm sorry. I thought there was more to it. No?
Are there training techniques for controlling the emotional temperature of a call?
Okay.
Yeah.
Remaining calm yourself as much, or at least project calm.
Mm-hmm.
Project the calm. Like we said in the beginning, the very best thing you can do at the very beginning is find out the person's name. Remember that that is a human being on the other end of the phone, not an inconvenience. Because I think, and I don't think, I don't say that to be mean. I say that because we are also human, and trauma and that constant just intake of all of the negativity does begin to take its toll on the first responder. So we have to work to remember the humanity that's on the other end of the phone. And I am guilty as charged. And I don't think that, if we're honest, anybody in this profession can say that they've never gotten to the place where they have to remind themselves, hey, we are here to serve the public. So how do you manage that? I think that's a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well said.
Yeah.
And our last question is from Code 3 Coffee Guy.
These names are awesome.
He says, I'm curious, how often do callers forget to say where they are? What happens if the location is unclear in the first few minutes?
Do they forget to say where they are? Most of the time, yes. Most of the time, I would say, if I had to try to give a number, just to kind of give you an idea, out of 50 calls, what would you say? 10 of them are going to start off with, hi, I'm at 123 Main Street at the Burger King. That's at the corner of such and such and such and such, and this happened, and now, and here we go. No. The other 40 calls are more normal. Come get this da-da-da-da-da-da, beep, 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 out of my house. This beep, 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 stole my so-and-so. Or this did X, Y, Z. And you have to say, where? I found that was a thing for me.
Yeah.
Where? I would never say, I would say, now, what's the address? I would say, where? At my house. You know what? Wrong question. Where are you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what happens if it's not, if we don't have that in the first few minutes of the call, we don't know where we're going, and we're dead in the water. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like what we were talking about in this episode. Like, that's where the training comes in. Like, so the call taker is kind of the, I don't know, the concierge, I guess, and will help the caller navigate through by asking them the questions so that help can get to where the caller is. And that's why the call taker, it's important for them to be well trained and stay calm so that they remember to ask all of these, very pertinent questions. So
one of my colleagues in the profession, or mentor, if you will, in the profession of teaching 911 consulting stuff, he always says, we are the learned friend. And that's really what this is. Because, have you ever called a customer service number for whatever, and you have a problem, but you don't know how to describe what the problem is?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, hi, how are you? I don't even know how to... This was wrong. I don't even know if I'm in the right department. I don't know. I should have pressed 2 when I pressed 5, but I meant to press... I don't know. Here's what's wrong. Can you tell me can you tell me what it is that I need? That's what we do. They know they have a problem. They know this is the number they were told to call. Beyond that, not much. And we are the ones that are the learned friend. The person on the other end of the phone goes, you know what? I got an idea what your problem is. Let me ask you a couple more clarifying questions so we can nail this down. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, learned friend. Hopefully we can all be a little bit more learned as we listen together, and we hope that you all feel a little bit more learned after watching today's episode. We appreciate you tuning in, and we appreciate our listeners for sending in some questions. We always love to hear from you guys, so if you have a question, please don't hesitate to shoot it over to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com, or leave it in a comment down below. And like and subscribe. Yeah.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Erica's going to get on me if I forget to say that. From all of us here at Lifeline 911, I'm Gary.
I'm Erica.
And we will see you next week.
Thank you for watching our production of Lifeline 911. If you have any questions about today's topic or topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please reach out to us at lifeline911podcast@gmail.com. This has been a production of Lifeline 911 Podcast, copyright 2025. From all of us at Lifeline, stay safe out there. And until next time, this is Lifeline 911 signing off.